Governor, we got a couple questions in the chat box. Thank you first for asking me to join the 20-person vaccine advisory committee. One of the questions is, when do we think the 65 to 74-year-old age group will be able to register for the vaccine?
Few weeks. I wish it was faster than that. And as I sort of implied, that's based upon the assumption we're going to continue to get 50,000 vaccines a week. If that changes, and find out from Angela, maybe it will change, we can vastly accelerate. We got the capacity to vaccinate 5 times as many people. So give us the vaccine, we'll put it to work, and that will allow us to expand the pool of people.
That's great, and I know the business community is looking to maybe be able to register at the towards the end of February. So exciting times, Governor. Another question. Obviously, the minority-owned community has been devastated by COVID, and so what plans do we have to support the small Black-owned businesses in Connecticut as they rebuild from their losses and we rebuild Connecticut?
Small businesses in general, and women and minority-owned businesses in particular, have been slammed. They don't have a lot of capital to weather a storm like this. We got to do everything we can to keep them going. So, David Lamont put in place the short-term grants. We handed out $5,000 grants to 10,000 companies in the last month. We've also got bigger grants for larger companies. A little focus on the restaurant and the hospitality because they were hit so hard. Chris, we couldn't provide everything to everybody, but we could provide a bridge to the paycheck protection program, which John mentioned. It's a little clunky. It's out there now. Apply again. Connecticut punched way above its weight class last time. Work with your local community banks. Work with your traditional lenders. Get at the front of that line, because I think that's going to buy us the time until the vaccines really make a difference.
Thanks for that, Governor. Governor, this next question is on the minds, I'll tell you, of our business members as well. When I've reached out to folks across Connecticut, transportation and infrastructure is the one thing that people come back. And I know we tried before with the tolls, but everyone wants to solve transportation and infrastructure. And I guess we all have different ideas about how to go about it. We're hoping we'll get some federal dollars, and maybe you could comment on that. I know you have a great relationship with the new, President Biden. But what updates do we have around transportation and infrastructure and solving that?
I tell you that, first of all, the transportation fund is going broke. I think you can see why people are driving less. Price of gasoline is down. So it's just one of those things that Hartford hates to solve, but we have to solve it. In the meantime, I can tell you that we got pretty good federal support last year and this coming year. Chris, it's a little ironic that we were able to repair things at 30% less cost, because we're able to do it often during the day and not at 2 o'clock in the morning. We're able to close down a lane because of a lot less traffic. Maybe we've learned something about how to do this even more efficiently going forward. I think you're going to see Connecticut get an additional $200+ million out of federal support. So we're in good shape. We don't have to slow things down. We don't have to slow up state of good repair. But I still say, shame on Connecticut. The feds are going to come up with an infrastructure bill, which is transportation, a broadband, a green technology, and it's going to be 80-20 or 90-10. And we have to show we have a revenue stream that we can pay for our 20% share on that. And you're right. I came up with some ideas last time that went over like a lead balloon. I didn't like the other guy's ideas either, which was borrow $700 million a year or take the money from the rainy day fund. So weigh in. I mean, I need a problem solvers caucus who can not just complain from the sidelines, but say, here's how I would solve the problem. And CBIA can really help me take the lead on this. And if we can do this with transportation, we can do this with maybe pensions and other big knotty problems that have festered in this state for too long.
Yeah, and I'm happy to say, Governor, this is one of our top priorities for this year, a bipartisan solution to the transportation and infrastructure, so that, that's critical to growing our state. That's critical to us being better and stronger than before. And I'm happy to say we did sit down with your folks this past week. We're throwing things up against the wall, coming up with different solutions. And again, that public-private partnership, that's the way we're going to solve these. So I appreciate you inviting us in and helping us be at the table, be in the room where it happens, right? The next question, a little swing here, Governor, is the nonprofits have been challenged since the Medicaid rate was bumped up. And we've advocated doing more with the nonprofits, right? Maybe doing some more state services and utilizing the nonprofits. How do you envision supporting the nonprofits as we rebuild Connecticut?
Well, in the near term, with the federal support, we got the nonprofits an additional $100 million because they weren't telecommuting. They were taking care of folks on the front line. They were taking care of people with intellectual disabilities. They couldn't dial it in. And for that, they were extraordinary partners for us. Now with the vaccine rollout, we're working closely again with the not-for-profit community. And we're going to be able to provide additional funding out of the CARES Act funding to keep our not-for-profits going. So this is our bridge over the course of the next 6-12 months. To be blunt, I fuss less about the amount of money I get from the feds and more about phase it in over a period of time. Don't make us spend it all by December 31st. Give us some flexibility. I can make that money go to work in a much more significant way. But anyway, like the business community, the not-for-profits have been amazing partners for us. And they're going to play a bigger, not a smaller role in state government as we go forward, because I have a heck of a lot of people retiring. So I got to figure out the most efficient way to deliver services.
And we've heard from the business community, Governor, that they really want to help the nonprofits as well and the minority-owned businesses. And so we're going to work really hard at CBIA to try to connect those businesses who want to do something great for their community and always are invested with those nonprofits. So we'll work hard at that as well, Governor. Governor, the next question goes back to the Workforce Council and workforce development, and it's around funding, right? The Governor's Workforce Council came up with a 50-page plan, very thorough, incredible ideas in there around reforming the education system, programs that will root people who come to Connecticut in their cities so they stay in Connecticut. How do we fund that? How do we fund the Workforce Council plan or the priorities around workforce development this year?
Well, this year, I'm feeling pretty confident. We got $400 million from the feds for K through 12. So a lot of those high school programs, you start getting your certificate, save you some time, hit the ground running upon graduation. And we're going to get probably $250 million for colleges and universities. Tell the legislators, I know they're coming on next, hey, we'll help you spend that money. The feds are pretty directive about how that money is to be spent. So it's not like I have total free reign there, but I do have the capacity to direct some of that money to workforce development. And I've said before, Chris, my priority is looking at those certificate programs, expanding, thinking a little bit more broadly about how we reform our community colleges. It breaks my heart. 80% of the people starting community college don't graduate. So how can I come up with a curriculum that makes sense? So it's not a matter of all new money, but it's a matter of reform. And this is the year to do it. And we're going to be able to put significant resources, COVID-related resources behind this because we're transforming our workforce.
Career Pathways, Governor, is a huge opportunity for us in Connecticut, and our affiliate, ReadyCT, works really closely with a lot of the school systems, especially in Hartford, to develop those career pathways. As you said, not everyone's destined for college. I believe it's about a third of our 30,000 high school graduates each year don't go to the military and don't go on to college. That's a huge opportunity to fill these job opportunities that we have in manufacturing, financial services, computer services. So, kudos to you again for creating the Governor's Workforce Council. I think we can get the funds that we need to. I know the manufacturing community has called for a refunding of the Manufacturing Innovation Fund, which partially funds incumbent worker training, again, as well as the apprentice program. Any thoughts around that? You think that those are programs we can continue to fund and should continue to fund in Connecticut?
I do. Another one that I like and we're working on is give your businesses a tax credit if they forgive a student loan. They hire somebody from Connecticut, they stay on for 3 or 5 years, we'll credit you so that you have an incentive to hire We can get rid of a lot of this student debt out there right now. I think those other programs make a lot of sense. Look, we've created, and Kerry, we've got this workforce group. It's a freestanding group. We've never had that before. They're domiciled over at DECD right now, and we're going to expand that. But it doesn't work for government to do this by ourselves. If you just have some government guy, saying this is what you need, that never works. But we're going to follow your lead on this, Chris.
That's great, Governor. And as you know, I spent the last 18 years in manufacturing. The creation of the Chief Manufacturing Officer position that Colin Cooper fills, working with David Lehman at DECD, Governor, that has been a home run. Again, a poster child for what public-private partnership can do. And there's a question from the manufacturing community about all the monies they've spent on personal protective equipment and organizing their facilities to be COVID safe. And this really goes beyond manufacturers. Any thoughts about what we can do to help folks with the expenses they've incurred, whether it's been PPE or COVID, workplace compliance? I know one of our legislative priorities this year is maybe the unintended consequence of expanding the sales and use tax. If you buy personal protective equipment, you get taxed on it. You also get taxed on training as well. And maybe, we all didn't know COVID would happen when we expanded the sales and use tax. And obviously that kind of disencourages folks from acquiring PPE. So any thoughts you have on helping the business community with all the expenses they've incurred?
Yeah, right now we are a backup for you. So we have a stockpile, and the feds actually have a stockpile now. It is the private sector's role to provide for themselves. We're going to make sure that nobody gets left off. That's fact number one. But I think the most important thing I could have done for manufacturing was keep them open. What I've got a lot of capacity on is testing and make that available so your folks can get tested on the way into the factory floor. We're rolling out the vaccines very soon. And yeah, the idea of, no tax on PPE, it's that's an easy one. Make it just a little bit easier for people.
And it has a very small fiscal note, Governor. And again, we'll work with your team to, and that's the key, right? We need fiscal stability here in Connecticut. Governor, the next one comes from the cities and towns, and it asks, is there a way that the towns and cities can work with the state to be a training ground for the unemployed, and their salaries may be underwritten by the state until positions open up with the community? There's been a lot of talk about people being displaced in some industries. Maybe it's the hospitality and leisure industries. Yet we have these job openings at Electric Boat and in our biopharma communities. And it's an interesting dynamic in Connecticut right now. We have some folks who are having record years and can't find the people to fill the jobs. And obviously we have other areas where we have record unemployment. Any thoughts about how maybe we could utilize our towns, and any thoughts around retraining?
Yeah, I mean, that gets to our workforce development, Chris. But more broadly, what we did during the summer, we had a lot of kids who hadn't been in school for months at that point, is we did put in place in funding for our municipalities, so they had a summer outdoor work programs like the Civilian Conservation Corps, just to get people back in the game. In the last few months, we've created a program for a lot of the kids coming back, or kids who weren't in school at that point, so they could help us out. They could help us out in vaccination and frontline support we needed there. We had hundreds of college kids, Chris, come back and help out in the classroom. We had a number of teachers that I can Zoom teach, but I can't go in for one reason or another. I did not want that to be a reason the school had to close down. I wanted that to be a reason that a 22-year-old who may develop a love of education can come in and help manage that classroom a little bit. I think those were some of the things that President Biden liked about Miguel Cardona, that he was very entrepreneurial about how we could keep our schools open going forward. So the bottom line is, again, out of our CARES Act money, we've got the capacity to work with our municipalities to come up with programs. They got to be COVID-like related. But for a lot of kids, young people who have been, off the battlefield for a long time, this gives us a chance to keep them busy and something productive, and we can pay them a little bit to do it.
Hey, and Governor, let me use this opportunity to give a pitch to Kelly Marie Valeris, who you put into the Office of Workforce Strategy. Again, Kelly worked with me in manufacturing, just like Colin did for many years. I think we're taking over the government, it seems like. But that group has launched the 180 Skills program, If folks don't know about it, check it out. It's on the governor's website. It's all about retraining some of those folks who have been displaced to maybe get an opportunity to get into manufacturing or other areas where we have the need, Governor, either now or we know we're going to have them soon. So a great job again creating that office and filling that position with Kelly, Governor. Governor,
thank you for giving her a shout out, and it's a testament to how important we think workforce is. And if I could pull back for 1 second on that, Chris, you've mentioned a number of people, Colin, Kelly, David. They came from the private sector. We have a whole different metrics here. We've always, over the last 50 years, Hartford's been a little bit of its own ecosystem. We sort of hired within folks who have been in Hartford for an awful long time. 98% came from the public sector. Look, that's great. And there's an incredibly important role there. But I also like people who know how to manage. And I like people who have managed before. I think Connecticut has done pretty well on related to COVID. And frankly, I got a guy who spent 12 years at IBM, Josh Jabal, who helped oversee that. It was a management issue. It was a production issue. That's what we had to do. And I think that's a group of people that are helping our state to find new ways to deliver services more efficiently at less cost.
And all those folks, Governor, that you mentioned have just, in my mind, been a home run. And it's not private sector is better than public sector. It's that diversity, right? It's bringing in different people with different perspectives. Private sector folks like myself coming into CBIA, working with folks who have been here for a long time. Private sector folks coming into the government, working with folks who have been in the public sector. You need the balance of both, Governor, and I think you've hit a home run on the staff. Paul Mound, Josh Cabal, David Lehman, all the folks we've mentioned. So we really enjoy working with them, Governor, and they're folks who aren't idealists, right? They're pragmatic. They're willing to work towards a solution. And that's where we're seeing this home run of the public-private partnership, whether it's been the reopening committee back in the spring, the vaccine committee now, the folks who have worked on the Transfer Act. More to come, I hope, Governor. More to come. And one of the things that we all can work on, we talked a lot about transportation and infrastructure. You announced the TCI partnership, and there's a question about what Massachusetts is working around the environment and climate change. You mind talking a little bit about that, Governor? It does go to transportation, but it also addresses the environment a little bit.
Yeah, TCI, the Transportation Climate Initiative. Look, it's not going to be very popular, and you're going to have the next round of people on saying there must be another way to do it. That's not very good, but because what it does is it says there'll be a fee for purchasing fuels that create pollutants. And that fee could be up to 5 cents. And then will depend whether the wholesalers pass that along at the gas pump or eat some of that. But let's face it, it's not very popular, but I think it's necessary. I think I wanted to do it with my fellow governors. I don't want to do anything that puts Connecticut at a competitive disadvantage. So I did that with Charlie. I did that with Gina. Gina, before she goes down to Commerce, by the way, Gina Raimondo from Rhode Island. So we have another good friend there. So it will slowly move people towards electric vehicles and less pollutants there. B, it generates about 80 or 90 million bucks for us. So that helps our fledgling transportation fund going forward. And we did pretty well on our electric grid. It will be 90% carbon free within the next few years. Our greatest source of pollutants is transportation related, and anything we can do to begin to make a difference there is important. And again, this is a Black and brown community that often live along these transportation corridors. They're the ones who are generally most hit with those comorbidities. And I saw that reflected as I looked at the COVID numbers over the last year. So it's related to public health, it's related to the environment, and hopefully it's related to speeding up transportation and keeping Connecticut more competitive.
Yeah, we're committed to working with your office, Governor, to learn more about it, see how we can fit it in Connecticut to solve a couple things, right? Transportation as well as the climate issues that we've got right now. Governor, looking a little bit beyond this year, I know we're all focused on fiscal year 21 and how we're going to get through it, and we've had some good news with the recent projections, but just looking slightly beyond this year, There's an opportunity that we have with potentially a record number of state employees being eligible for retirement. And maybe you could talk a little bit about the work that BCG is doing. I know we at CBIA have done some studies, and it looks like it could be a potentially $350 to $400 million cost reduction around the state government. But more importantly, it's an opportunity to potentially bring in technology to make the state services more efficient. And we saw that back in, I believe it was April, when the DOL was trying to process a record number of unemployment claims with a 40-year-old, I believe was a Cobalt sister, Governor, I'm not too sure. You know technology better than I do. And you went in there, and Josh went in there, and you upgraded the system, and you changed that system, and bam, we were processing unemployment claims in a week or two. I mean, that doesn't speak volumes to what technology could do to government services and many services. And with those employees potentially retiring in the next year or two, having the technology to still have those state services be as efficient, if not more efficient than they are today. You mind talking about the state employee retirement and what we're doing to kind of look at that?
Yeah, I've got a plan for that. The legislature back in their last budget said, hire an outside group to help you evaluate that. I think it made really good sense. That's what we're doing. But I knew coming into the government that it's a technological backwater. I think you guys all know that too, don't you? Governors don't like to necessarily invest in technology. It's going to make their successor look really good, but you're not necessarily going to see the benefits of it in the near term. And sometimes labor doesn't like it, so they think it's all about displacing labor. I think it's about getting the very best value for the taxpayer and the customer. And we got to start thinking about each and every one of the people we provide service to as a customer. Yeah, the Department of Labor, all of a sudden, the number of claims are up by 10-fold. And we got this Cobalt system, and we were about to get on that very soon. So we had to jerry-rig some things. It's not like you get an Apple download and a quick upgrade. These are all, hardwired systems. But that said, again, referring back to Josh and his 12 years at IBM, his predecessors were, mayors and state senators at Department Administrators. I got a guy who was 12 years at IBM. And it's a question of how departments can work more efficiently. You see that at DMV, getting those lines cut way down. It's also a matter of working broadly across these different silos. And technology can bring people together. Right now, during COVID, we had to get everybody together in the emergency operation room and then via Zoom. And then you sort of say, well, why do they all have to get together? And you're just reminded that Department of Public Health and Department of Corrections had to talk all the time because of the nature of the COVID spread in a congregate facility. So those are the type of investments we're making that I think are going to allow us to provide a lot better service and repurpose people who no longer have to do a lot of manual work right now. It's going to take a little bit of time to do it, but we're already showing real progress. We've consolidated personnel, so rather than have every department doing their own personnel, we have a better window on that. We've consolidated or are consolidating technology, so it's not every single department doing their own thing. And we now have an Amazon purchasing platform, and that's across all of state government. And that's helpful in terms of giving us a little bit of economies of scale and lowering the price. But just as importantly, letting us know why they use 5 times more staples in one department than another department. It gives us some insight into what's going on in terms of purchasing. And to be blunt, I'd like to open that up to municipalities. I think we could save them a lot of money. And I'd like to broaden that, working with Charlie and Gina and Andrew Cuomo, see how we as a region can purchase in bulk and get real savings for our taxpayers.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity, Governor, and it's not a layoff opportunity, right? It's employees who are retiring, and we're backfilling them with more efficient technology. Regionalization, as you mentioned, is a huge opportunity. I happen to live in Durham. We have a regional school system. We try to do more with the regional government, and it does lower costs, Governor. Governor, there's a question around taxes, and I know our members are worried about this. I think all Connecticut residents are worried about it, right? We still have the budget deficits in the out years. And some lawmakers have pushed for tax hikes. And I'll tell you, my response to that has been, Connecticut is the poster child for why massive tax hikes have not worked, right? We had massive tax hikes over the last decade, if not 2 decades. And as a result, we had this mess that you came into, right? We still had a budget deficit issue. We had companies leave the state. We had the jobs leave with those companies. We had the people leave with those jobs. And massive tax hikes just don't work in Connecticut. And this is all about reimagining, or as you said in your opening your State of the State, what was it? It was changing the narrative, Governor, right? Changing the narrative and not learning from history, but not repeating it. How about some comments around tax hikes? How do you feel about that?
Well, I think I've been pretty clear. I have no interest in broad-based tax increases. Every governor, Republican or Democrat, since, including Lowell Weicker, has done that, and it did not solve the problem. And I came in, and we had a $3.7 billion deficit. The good news is, look, there's a lot of volatility in our revenues, no question about it. How fast we come back, time will tell. We do have deficits in the out years starting at July 1 of over $1 billion. I'll be blunt about it. I also tell you that we have one of the most robust rainy day funds in the country. That gives us a little bit of flexibility. We'll see what, if anything, the federal government's going to do in terms of state and local aid. I don't want to depend upon that, but what it does do is buy us some time to make some of the efficiencies that you and I were just talking about before. So to be blunt, I have no interest in raising taxes, no broad-based tax increases. I think I can do that. I can keep faith with people in terms of the social services, keep faith with people in terms of the not-for-profits. I know the hell that people are going through during this COVID pandemic. I know the fact that a lot of your small businesses are struggling every day just to keep their doors open. And I want to send a signal loud and clear that I hear you.
That's great, Governor. We appreciate you standing up to that. We still have a structural issue in Connecticut that we got to solve. And you're committed, I know, Governor, to keeping your foot on the gas to solving that. Governor, the next question is around some of the concerns that folks had when people were getting sick with COVID and workers' comp liability for the business community. You did a great job, I thought, with that executive order. You limited the time frame. Businesses then had certainty, and that's all businesses ever asked for, Governor, right, is some level of certainty so they can run their businesses. Where do you stand on expanding comp-related, COVID-related workers' comp claims?
Very similar to what we did in the spring, Chris. There was a bill, hey, if you get COVID, it happened in the workplace, and that's going to be reflected in your workers' comp claim. And back then, let's face it, everything was on fire. Positivity rate was really high. Our workers were heroes coming into work. So I understood the fear, and you got to keep people coming to work. But we greatly limited the scope of the claims, made sure that you would already file the claim during that very limited period of time. Now, here we are 8 months later. If I do anything at all, I think it's going to be very narrow and limited in scope. But right now, I'm doing everything I can to get businesses open. And if you feel like you've got this workers' comp liability hanging over your head, it's a lot tougher to get people to get their businesses open, people back to work. And I'll be blunt. I mean, I think the business community has done pretty damn well in this state. I didn't have to mandate it. I mean, okay, we said plexiglass and not too crowded and things, but your folks understood that if it was a crowded restaurant or a crowded store, if people weren't taking the precautions, if people were in there not wearing a mask, nobody's going to go in there. So most of this has been self-correcting. And I'd like to think that when it comes to employee health and safety, the folks that you're representing there are putting that front and center, because that's the way they know that they can get their workers in the office the next day.
Absolutely, Governor. Governor, we got a couple more minutes here, so I'll throw one more question at you. Our policy pledge is around small business relief, and we talked about maybe eliminating the tax on PPE and training to help some of the small business, among other things. It's also around workforce development. But, one of the biggest things in our priorities that has been very well received by businesses and residents in Connecticut is urban renewal, right? Reviving our cities, because as our cities grow and become prosperous, Connecticut will grow and become more prosperous. Any thoughts on priorities you may have for this legislative session around urban renewal? We talked a little bit about regionalization, zoning reform. How do we get our cities to come back with the state governor?
Well, you got to be a champion for the cities. You have to be a champion for the cities, even if you're from a small town, because Connecticut will never get the next generation of millennials and growth in a big way unless we bring our cities back to life in a really consistent way going forward. You know, that, to be blunt, Chris, that was part of my transportation strategy to make our cities great transportation hubs, focused on transit-oriented development, affordable housing in and around those communities, and making this a place where businesses want to locate. And at the same time, what I've got to do as a governor is keep faith with my mayors. One way we've done that is we've fully funded schools, actually more than fully funded schools. A, so they have great quality education, and B, give them, they can hold the line on spending, they can hold the line on property tax rates. We still have extraordinarily high property tax rates in our urban, well, across the state, but in our urban areas in particular. So I think full funding of ECS and more municipal support. Maybe we pay a little more of the pilot programs. You know, that's the payment in lieu of taxes for those places. These are all ways that we can help hold down and reduce property taxes. These are ways that we can make investments in those communities, make sure they have good schools. It doesn't work. If young people don't want to move to our cities, we're not going to be able to make it. And right now, people are taking a second look at Connecticut, and they're taking a second look at our cities. You know, Hartford, Bridgeport, New London, Waterbury, Stanford. Oh my God, they're on fire there in terms of people lining up to buy. We got to take advantage of that.
Absolutely, Governor. My analogy has been our cities are like the anchor stores at the mall, right? They attract the folks to the mall, but once they're at the mall, they do their shopping, they keep going, and that's key to us. We've got to get, and that's the landing area, as you said, for the young people, our cities. And they get rooted in the cities, then they move to the suburbs, then they move to the more rural areas, and that could be a home run for us in Connecticut. One last question, Governor. Unemployment trust fund, right? It's insolvent again because of the unemployment, or will become insolvent because of the unemployment claims. That's a burden that usually falls on our businesses. Could be about $1 billion. It was during the last recession. And we've been trying to work around some reforms there, maybe. Any thoughts that you have for this coming session and how we may handle the unemployment trust?
I am pushing our new chairperson of appropriation, Rosa DeLauro. You know, rather than, you don't have to fool around with how much you get on unemployment and a lot of those things they're doing right now because they're very popular. And I know this is more complicated, but we've all 50 states have these trust funds are underwater. And rather than turn it into a grant, turn the money we're getting very low interest loans from the feds to pay, you know, these extraordinary unemployment claims that are coming in terms of the volume. If you made that a grant, that would save our small business, give us some certainty. We wouldn't have to raise any rates to do that. And I could use your help on that because it's not necessarily something that the politicians really focus on, and they don't get that much benefit, you know, in the campaign trail for saying I turned the unemployment loan into a grant. But I think you guys understand how important that is. And I'll just leave you that's important. But I really want to get people back to work. You know, Chris, you and I were there at your plant talking about the shared work program, for example, which is rather than paying people unemployment because, you know, their restaurant or bar is closed down. I really want to pay employers to keep people employed. And that's what our shared work program does right now. And if you can only afford to keep that person on board 50% of the time, and you've got to choose whether to fire them or not, keep them on board 50% of the time. We have a federal program. I like federal programs that will pay the other 50% for the you know, foreseeable future, just so that we get the vaccines going, we get the positivity rate continues to go down, we continue. We see some light at the end of the tunnel. We see the end zone, whatever analogy you want to have. Then those small businesses are ready to go and they don't have to start from scratch. Those are my priorities, to keep your businesses going, keep those small businesses afloat as the wind slowly gets back to our back again. Hey, Chris, it's great to be with you, John, and everybody here today.